to make sure that we are sharing information that can be shared externally with the audience. So what we are happy to do is follow-up sessions where we can do a more focused deep dive on specific elements that interest people a bit more. But obviously, you have to be conscious of the fact that this is something we are researching and developing in parallel. So it has to be kind of strategically shared so that we are able to work on it as well as share it as we build it. So I'm Govind. Hi, nice to meet you all. I lead the UK Insurance PA Prod unit, and I'm here today to talk about some of the experiments that we've been conducting with Gen AI and its capabilities. And the interesting part of the whole talk and concept is to make sure that what I started with is effectively to try to replace myself with Gen AI, which I think is everybody's first thought to say, what can Gen AI do? Can it really replace me? And the satisfactory answer, at least for now, is that definitely not. So, and you'll find out in a second, because and just if I have to give a strap line, the strap line is that nothing is done in one go. There are iterations, people come back to things. So that's the reason why, at the moment, the model is not good enough in terms of self-correction and other aspects. So to start with, one thing that I always okay. All right. Solve something that's good. So the world we live in, it would have been far easier if we say, tomorrow morning we're going to launch a new product. Brilliant. We go in there, write requirements, launch a product, and get customers in, earn money, be rich. But the problem is that the product that you want to launch is your current view of the business strategy, which means that you're going out with this product because X, Y, Z factors, you have to do the research hypothesis, and you found a gap in the market, and you're launching it. But the problem is that you have an op model that is supporting your existing products, that is supporting your legacy customers. Then you have business processes that is maybe 10% of the time supporting new business, 90% of the time supporting existing business. And the technology estate, I'm not the expert, but I know for sure that a lot of cost is spent in data migration, data management across, especially I'm from insurance. So honestly, I just really hope insurance stays forever because that's the only thing I know about. I know that in that industry, there are requirements to keep the data for 125 years as a regulatory requirement. So you can imagine the amount of money we spend on existing business. So this is just to highlight that AI would have been far easier if we just be talking about brand new customers and brand new products, and you launch just forget everything, start from scratch. That's the easiest thing to do. And the reason why companies like EPAM exist is because we can balance both things, and we can enable a new proposition, a launch, as well as maintaining the existing estate. So the main thing is to just highlight the fact that we don't want to upset people who have been with a certain organization, insurance, for example. Someone had life insurance with someone that they bought in 1970, they still would want to be able to avail benefits that are promised. And honestly, the benefits promised to someone who took an insurance in 1970 are far, far better than what has been promised now. So the idea is that if some sort of manager comes in and says, oh, brilliant, we are doing very low value life insurance, which means that we don't need to worry about these huge regulations, let's just go crack on. But Mr. Product Manager can't really do that because we've got these people that we look after. And unless we want to set up a new company every time we want to do it, it's okay. So here we go. What we said, okay, what we'll do is we'll divide the customer segments that we have into different personas, and we'll design for them. And obviously, you must have seen a variation of this slide before. So think of age, gender, income, household relationships, location, other aspects to use traditionally to create personas. What's the problem? Okay, and it promises great stuff as well. So it's user research, requirement gathering. It helps you in decision making. It helps you align different people to come together to a single vision. It helps you to test and validate your understanding. So the idea is great. The concept was great. Why did it not work? It is because personas generally done the beginning of a big transformation program, but they just remain there forever. Maybe in context of marketing communication, we still have personas and we still manage it and we send different documentation to people, but in the general sense of the operating model, personas are forgotten the moment we have agreed the requirements, and they're not a living artifact in that sense. Also, as I said, the marketing communication still continues to evolve with what types of customers we're talking to. Are we talking to someone who wants to retain the business with more? Are we talking to someone who's new, who needs more information coaching? So marketing persona then starts stripping away from the op model and the business process persona, which is to say that you start getting a separation and the understanding of the marketing and the business process. And that is the biggest failure point of not being able to then track the impact of changes you want to make or products you launch. And therefore, other aspects I'm just going to quickly rip through is that, the idea is to deliver functionality. So, yes, I want to deliver a new direct-to-customer portal that sells life insurance at very cheap rates. Now, who are you going to sell it to? Oh, yeah, we're going to define personas again. We're going to be completely different from the personas originally defined, which means the op model and the business process you have in place now is catered towards a very different persona than what you're targeting now, which means that you're suddenly introducing a new persona, which means new processes and new layers of complexity on top of existing complexity, and this will never reconcile. So that's one of the big failures in general. And there are not just personas that are a problem. It's basically compliance wants us to keep everyone's data for 125 years and do not want us to share anything with anyone. But the strategic team wants us to do analytics on everyone and create patterns so that we can do better products. And similar to this, there are different alignments between customer services team who want to make sure that customers call in as less as possible because their KPI is to reduce the amount of customer calls in. But on the other hand, the experienced people want to make sure that especially the new customers are nurtured and they have longer calls with customers to explain the features of the products and stuff like that. So there's misalignment of requirements. And this exists because of just what I said before, because there is a drift that happens because that extra layers of process get added in. And customer services almost evolve into their own operating model versus the actual new business or distribution. They basically go in two different directions. And that is why we see these problems. Again, other things like dependencies, which are upstream, downstream, not captured properly because you see someone in the new business team introduce a new commission model and did not communicate it to the sales, to the backend team because they think, oh, I'll just manage it in the commission model. But the problem is that if you don't do it this way, there's again a breaking point in the process. So what can we do? So not a big idea, but really simply, the reason why we thought this can be helpful is to make sure that the persona is alive, not just at the point where we're launching the proposition, but can be kept alive and be validated against the business process and the model that we have. And how do we do that? So we basically step-by-step build out a solution that brings us that ability to be able to get to the working persona simulation that we want to get. So how did we start about this? So obviously the first thing was to find if there has been any research done previously on this topic of simulation and simulating the persona and simulating business process journeys. So this is interesting because this is just literally my learning. I started using Scholar.ai. How many of you heard Scholar.ai before? No one? Okay, one, two. There are some people. So very good resource for searching peer-reviewed research papers. But the problem is that their AI is not very well tailored. So it doesn't allow you to modify that. I'm very interested in this topic, or I want to look at papers who have more than 30 citations. So you can't really modify that kind of thing. And so they were good, but they only got us to some point. Then what we did was we set up a RAG pipeline, which basically was scraping the internet for the personas. Now, in this case, papers that were relevant to simulation, or to be honest, more generic, but at the moment we're looking at simulation. And the idea was to look at scored out papers that had no citations or no peer reviews to make sure that we're only looking at papers which are actually being peer reviewed and have citations on it. Then we also wanted to, because we're still getting some garbage in there, so we wanted to make sure that we're able to sort the results as per the relevance. So we found a GitHub repository I could share with anyone if they are interested. The GitHub repository that is already very well used in terms of sorting the papers from relevance perspective. So then we were able to shortlist the papers and create a paper tree. I'll show an example tree in a second. And it's not a very visual thing. It used to come back in a JSON with relationships. So I had to resolve, create the tree itself. But the idea was that every paper that's written has citations behind. And then that paper which is cited has citations behind. And an interesting finding was that what I was looking for simulation in general as well. So specialty insurance, simulation, life insurance, simulation, disaster and catastrophic loss simulations, all of them had some base papers that were written back in 1980s, 1990s. They go back to it. So this is where I got reminded of vector databases, because that's exactly what they do, is they sort the knowledge and they go to the minimum distance, and you can still find nodes which are common across a lot of very, very different types of topics. So that is what we then selected the two best papers that we found, and we scraped them for any links to GitHub because we want to steal code from GitHub. Honestly, that was the objective, to find things that have been done or experimented on before. And we have also had another script that used to scrape people's writer's name and search on GitHub, matching repositories to find code that they've done. And this is how we landed on this specific paper. This paper is to do with trying to simulate the whole business process for specialty insurance from quote to bind to claim, and simulate all these different personas, which is the broker, the customer, the insurer, the underwriter, and the claimant, the claims team, and then do the simulation for 2, 3, 4 years to look at how the market dynamics change. And this, as you can see, it has citations from other papers, which can trace back to papers that were written 2006, 16, and even 1980. And from doing this scraping, we found out this GitHub repository. This introduces the Hades framework. This was actually done by someone at Brit Kai, the syndicate. And they developed a model that allows us to define these personas and define events that they will have in relationship to the business process. And then they can do a simulation to simulate this persona, stepping through the business process, and throw out a lot of logs, a lot of activity information in terms of person A reaches a certain step, 2 options, what do they choose? And depending on the likeliness and the closeness of the persona, they will choose one or the other. And then we can overlay that information to kind of point the parts of the process that either are points of concern, and that might be a genuine point of concern, because an example was that when we ran it for one of our customers, one of the numbers that are coming really high was call lengths for people calling in to take money out of their pensions. So this was a pension customer. And what was happening was that the call of someone wanting to take £1,000 from the pensions should not last for an hour, but it was lasting for an hour. So our simulation was getting stuck there for a lot of these personas. And when we actually deep dived into it, we could see big red marks on it. And then what we did was we asked the customer services team, and they explained the reason was that people who are old and lonely at the age of 75 plus, they want to call in. They don't want to set up a direct debit to get money every month. They want to call in and get that human touch and human interaction, and that's why the calls go on for an hour. And the head of customer services of the client said, I'm actually fine with that, because if that's an investment, that's almost like an essential service we provide to our customers. And this brings back the concept that if this was just being looked at from a black and white perspective, this is like, just fine, let's just cut it out. Let's just make sure that people just spend less time on it. But then that's an example of what interesting finding we discovered. But the other interesting thing that so this is just traditional ways of generating personas. And what we did was, I really hope I could zoom into this, but as I told you, I'm told to only share information that's shareable to the public right now. So this is our pipeline. It doesn't look beautiful, but the main objective here was to layer on the aspects of the persona creation, then stepping through the business journey and creating the activity logs. And the idea was that when we have the personas and they step through the journey with relevant events at certain points, what we get to is an option, obviously, on the UI to be able to change the weights of certain characters, certain things. So things like, if you're more interested in people who are of a certain segment, we can accentuate the weights to make sure that the frequency is delivering for a certain customer segment. And the idea was that we ran the discrete event simulation for 5 years of business, and we could discover patterns that was previously hidden. I'll give you another example of that. So a lot of customers who want to get money out of the pensions, they somehow thought that buying an annuity is the only option. And that's the reason why annuity demand was artificially high. But the idea was that it was really a mistake on the proposition itself, because annuity was the first option that used to appear on the screen that you click. So almost 70% of people at that age who are ready to take money out of their pensions, they see annuity as the option and they just proceed because they get a guaranteed annual income every year, which means that was almost done for a good purpose, but it was resulting in a negative pattern from that sense. And then the idea was that when we did the other way around, when we made annuity the third option instead of the first option, suddenly people started going to draw on other aspects, and we did try it as part of the customer group as well. And that is a feedback that we go from there. So this kind of, it's not something that we did on the live garment, but it does prove us that it can bring us valuable insights doing this kind of stepping in. The other aspects of how we can really use this is, I'm not going to talk about marketing because there's a lot of already very good solutions available in marketing. So that's something that's possible in the future when the models get better, but let's not talk about over now. Now, the idea is that if you have a business case for a change to the process, you can change the process, you can run the simulation once with the process, so you get your expected results, your baseline, and then you can modify the specific steps in the process to then compare it with the baseline to see expected behavior or strange behavior or failure points. So the idea was that if you change the process, I'll share an example. So like I was saying before, a new commission model being introduced at the distribution stage. So someone says, if as an advisor or as an insurance agent, you sell more than £50,000 of premium, we will give you an extra bump of money. And that extra bump of money, the problem is that it's not a problem that has been agreed. It needs to be accounted in the finance system to be expected to be paid out to a certain entity. So if you make a change at one place and forget to make a change the other, the simulation will just say falling over finance, because apparently that's where this extra change is not being accounted for. So that's an example of something to find. Again, the idea here is that we were able to then ask the model to, and this was really chatting with the model, to create some guardrails to prevent things like this happening. So if the idea was to have feature level guardrails like finance, any changes to premium, commission, and anything has to have a corresponding finance story. So this is something we've not done now, but the plan is to have a POC with Jira integrated into the system, where when someone is typing a story in Jira, it checks against the guardrail. So the idea was that if you call the simulation at every story, it'll be too costly. But the idea is, please check against the guardrails. That would be an easier and a more cheaper option to compare the story and make sure that they're still in the delta of control that can happen in the process. So that's that one. And obviously the other one is that if you break something by the writing requirements, what you can get is a notification saying what's breaking, what are you really breaking, why you introduce commissions and you do not have a corresponding commission story. Can you please do that and then click this checkbox? So that's another way to do it. Okay, so the other aspect is how to start. The idea is that how do we get started with this kind of process and journey, and how anybody in this room can get started. And I think this is something that I would encourage everybody to experiment with. You don't need to, I wrote basic Python knowledge, but I promise you don't need to know Python to start with this exercise or similar exercise that I did. The main thing is that you should be able to download Python on your system, and then you should be able to install Streamlit. Streamlit is a library which is very popular these days because it allows you to generate working UI from just text. So if you're able to prompt, you can go back and try this with any of the models. So I think even 3.5, 4, 4.0, or if someone has O1 Privy as well, all works. You can even try this on ePandial, which is exactly what one of the persons I worked with, they did exactly that, and that inspired me to do it. So they just went on ePandial, typed in, please generate a really simple application for me that takes in some text and gives me personas. Just try it as an experiment, and you'll be surprised. Make sure to prompt it to say that I want you to give me Streamlit code for it. But I'm just telling you, this is where you'll see the requirements come to life in front of you. And just to remind you, this is not a production-ready or scalable code. This is what I'm trying to talk about. This is just the beginning of the future of business analysis. But yes.
So this is basically like it allows you to prototype fast, right?
Yeah.
So basically, you can just test your even visual prototype that you have described in text,
yes.
but just prompt it and put it into Streamlit and have it visualized.
Yeah, exactly. So just imagine you can just, instead of writing 100 pages of requirement document, which I thought that was done now, but that still have quite a lot because people are doing it. One of the customers I recently worked with, they were writing requirements for the last 12 months. And they had like almost 5 PhD thesis amount of text that they handed over to me and said, oh, I want to build this thing. I'm like, just reading this would take me 6 months. So what can we do? And what I did was something similar. So I used Streamlit in that example where I built something very basic from what I heard in our conversation. And I then played it back to the head of product at the customer. And they were able to play around and they said, this resolves so many decisions that I was not able to visualize in front of me, because nothing I'm saying here is new. Visualizing things helps. Visualizing requirements helps. Making things visual as always, and this is what Agile is all about: iteration, making things visible, being able to play with things, being able to show things actually in how close to reality that things might be. So that is honestly, just do that. And what is important, by the way, here is that you don't try to become the developer, because the idea here is that Streamlit, as an example, is not scalable. It has no database, so it cannot talk to any of the client systems. The caveat is the clients will say, "Oh, can I use this from tomorrow in my live?"
You're apparently trying to become a designer, right?
Yes, yeah. So honestly, I would make a bold prediction that business analysts need to be more designer, and designers need to be more business analysts in the future. And the other insight that I figured out, and this is just my opinion, not Ethan's opinion, it's just here, that I see the business analyst role and product role merging more and more, given the admin tasks that the business analysts were doing earlier are trivial, and AI systems can do them better. So what we see is a merged role where what your responsibility is, you're owning the requirements, but you're responsible for the iteration. And this is where the key is to make sure that, raise hands. How many of you have written stories that have been changed 10 times? But everyone. So what's the reason for this change? It's because you're talking to one person in one business area, and they have the same concept, they have a different interpretation for that concept. For example, a distribution lead, a distribution head of distribution will only think about the commission that they can get in, the premium that they get in, the revenue that they can book. But of course, in customer service, it will be completely different. They'll be thinking about how can we serve customers better and not think about making money out of it. So again, this misalignment leads to misinterpretation and again, rewriting stories. And at the end of it, what I realized, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that only when you get to see the first demo, the penny drops and people say, oh yeah, okay. So that's what you meant when you were saying that. So this example just blows that concept out of the question. You only get to show what you really want to build. And the good thing with Streamlit is you can prompt it to modify the UI in real time. And even if you don't know Python honestly is English. You can see it's written statements like, if certain things happen, you need to execute this. And I know Python, but what I was showing to my wife really, and she's into finance, she's corporate action, so she has no background in Python. And I was showing her a screen, and she was looking at the code in parallel. Just because you can visualize it, it was very easy for her to then say, "Oh, I understand why this is written this way," because that is a mini eureka moment. I would say is that when you see the UI, you're inputting things into it, and you see some output, and then you see, "Oh, that's why," because this if statement is triggering here. And that just enables people to be more conscious of what they're trying to do. And I'm sure you guys should try Replit because that's great. Again, there will be a future where we'll not need the Python step in between. But I mean, it's slightly further away. So at the moment, from tomorrow, we'll just start trying stream learning to start with. Okay, so I've said some of these things just for repetition, but the idea is that the BA and the product manager tomorrow are going to be doing very different things than what we're doing now, but delivering the same results that we're delivering now with less complexity. So life is going to be easier for us, which means that if customers change their mind, they'll have to look at something and change the mind so that they're sure that that's why they're changing the mind. And it's an opinion the customer has given us instead of someone reading some text, interpreting it in their own way and giving it back to us. The idea is shifting responsibility. So as I said, everyone you pointed out as well, design and business analysis and product almost come together in that way, where I'm as a UX, I'm not as a business analyst trying to say, oh, I want this blue color box, or I want to make sure the information architecture of the screen is perfect to relay the right option in the right sequence, because I'm not the expert in that. And I'm not relying on the AI to do that. What I'm doing is at least surfacing those options in front of the client to show it as a demo so that they can reject or approve what they're seeing in front of them. So that's the kind of key win here. And I would say that will be almost essential part of the job description in the future. Then obviously visualize requirements. I've already said that, doesn't need to be said again. Fast idea to iteration. Other things are be able to track changes. The reason why I said be able to track changes better is because, again, you can have the code version, you can compare the versions together, or you can run the simulation that I had before. You can run the simulation to see what versions of code change and what business outcomes have been impacted by it. As I said before, none of what I've shared here I can show in this group, but please, if people are interested, please reach out to me. Happy to kind of share some stuff, information, and background and detail of how you can do even better. But if you take one thing from this session, I would say take the Streamlit and play with it tomorrow, today, and see the difference that it makes in your day-to-day jobs.